So it's beyond a joke, and there is no way in the wide world that we can stand by and keep letting this continue. Because we're going to have death tolls from people contracting diseases because of their caring for the environment and caring for the people and caring for the animals. We're going to have a lot of people pay this price, and this price is a lifetime price. Do you think that if Natalie Hahn could go back and redo over, do you think she'd be doing what she did for our nation? Do you think she would? By God, I hope she wouldn't. I hope that she would definitely go, you know what, the price I've paid to date, not what she's paying every single day, and even worse in the future. And she's got a long list of people who have been before her, who are suffering with her, and who are suffering just beginning. You know, and they don't have any access to support. The public couldn't give a rat's. You start talking about the names and the pains and the suffering that these people have, and everybody shuts off. The words are too big, and they're not Australian. They don't fit what we understand. But the suffering is horrific. And these guys paid that price to protect our assets, to protect our fauna and our flora and our environment, and nobody gives a rat's. Nobody's putting money into a fund to support this lady so she doesn't have to sell her home. Nobody puts money into our fighting fund to take on the councils and the governments. Nobody's emotive enough to give a damn to actually put some money in there and go, well, actually, I stand on your side of the fence. Everybody pats me on the back and goes, man, I've been following your story. I love what you're doing. It's fantastic. Keep after these bees. Keep going, you know. But nobody wants to put any money into it. It's an absolute nightmare to see how this material consumes our nation, and people are happy to stand by and watch the program, but they don't want to put money behind. They don't want to stand up and go, you know what, we stand by this. Until the government sees that people are standing behind Natalie Hahn, behind us, Queensland lantana removal, until they see us being funded and being supported by people, us charging into the council's offices and demanding that they actually stand up and for the rights of the ratepayers within the community, until that happens, we are not going to see massive changes in these materials. And massive is 4 million hectares to 6 million hectares. Get your head around it. You know, I have people tell me stupid things like, oh, well, why don't you poison the plant and then you crawl under that plant and then you plant a tree in the middle of the plant? 14 million hectares. And you want me to individually plant a tree in the middle of every bush? These people are serious. They don't want a tree, they don't want a blade of grass to be damaged in 14 million hectares of this crap. Next, at the end of this year, this will be 20 million hectares. And it's not growing by just that figure each year. It's getting a bigger figure each year. So as this continues to grow, there is no resolution to this, and now we have volunteer groups being set up and transformed, like Landcare. All of those processes are just a distraction to try and say to you, well, we're doing something. As a government, we've got all these organisations, Landcare, the Department of Natural Resources, Mines and Energy, the DAF, the DPI. We've got the Environmental Protection and Heritage. We've got names that just keep coming out of the woodwork of organisations sucking the money out of this and delivering, you're right, nothing at all. 14 million hectares. You know, we were doing math just 2 days ago with Lloyd Russell, doing math of what the infestations are out west, and we were doing prickly acacia, I forget the other ones. We did about 3 of them. And we're talking about, close to 80, 100 million hectares. I mean, 80 million to 100 million hectares. You know, when we look at these things as a group of weeds, then it puts a whole other perspective on this. And we're going to play around and screw around with volunteer organisations so the government can try to manipulate the facts to the people and say, well, we're doing something. Look, we've got Landcare. Jesus, man. I've seen their work. I've seen some of the places they've worked in. You know, the carnage that happens when they poison subsoil is just insanity. And people front up for this crap. I mean, some of the worst environmental vandalism I've seen's been on their sites. Moreton Bay Regional Council down there. Jesus. You know, until we're paying professionals like myself and some of the professionals in New South Wales that have the skill set and its permanent eradication, we're just pouring money down a toilet for the sake of pouring money down a toilet. Councils cost us 10 times what an actual contracting business like myself would cost. And it's not comparable. The results are not comparable. When we finish, the surface is finished, grassed, seeded, and perfect for maintenance. Even if we have to alter the terrain or whatever, our end goal is that surface is easy to maintain. It has to be. We have too many millions of hectares of crap caused by councils that until we start getting serious about making these surfaces manageable, we are just going to keep hemorrhaging money. And our nation can't keep doing this. We can't keep turning a blind eye and going, well, the council's the delivery process, so we just pretend and let them do their business. And the council just sees us as a funds mean for them to keep ripping us off. We get less services every single year, our rates go up every single year, and we get more harassment looking for fines. That's what the local laws officers are, just a revenue collection service. You know, it is beyond a joke. We need to take over control of our councils properly. They actually are representatives of the people. You need to understand that. So when you say to them, I want that material cleaned up, that material gets cleaned up. It's actually legal, their responsibility to clean it up. Now, they've been operating illegally for close on 30 years, 20 years for sure, okay? And we've let them do it. So it does eventually come back to us. We have such a low expectation of our prime ministers and of our premiers and so on and so on and so on. Well, they all lie. They're all grubs. They're all dirty, filthy suckers, and there's nobody better to put in. Until you care enough that you lift the stand and say, well, I expect whoever is representing us to be doing a bloody job. I expect to go down the road here and not see lantana for 100 kilometres in Moreton Bay Regional Council, in Brisbane City Council. I expect not to see lantana in those creekways and waterways, the sides of the roads. Until you lift your standard and you expect that, which is your legal right and their obligation. It's their lantana. They cannot release it to the environment. It cannot be allowed to seed. It says black and white in the Biosecurity Act 2014. It says that in black and white. Then why do we accept our Premier is just able to just ignore this? She's had this for 15 months. It took me 2 years to dig this crap out while they resisted my being able to get at it. Now, why aren't you jumping up and down and writing letters to the Premier? Until you write letters to the Premier, they consider me to be a real a-hole. They consider me to be a real deadbeat, okay? But until you start stepping up and putting money into this and then also putting your name down on writing letters to these people, writing a petition or putting a petition and then putting that somewhere doesn't work like you actually write an email to the Premier. It's easy. Just pull up her details on there. You'll see. Contact your Premier. Contact your Prime Minister. Contact them. You pay for them. Contact them. Ask them. Send them my details and my information and my videos and say, listen, I'm unhappy. This is what I see is happening. This is on every roadside that I drive down. I want this cleaned up. It's illegal for it to be there. Quote the Biosecurity Act 2014. They already are aware of it. They've got copies of it since 15 months ago. But we allow these people to operate illegally. Until we care, they won't care. I'm telling you now, it's simple stuff. That comes from horses. Unless I have a high standard, the horse isn't going to care. If I don't expect better of these people than the conduct that we've suffered and the absolute carnage done to our wildlife and to our environment, then they're not going to care. They will keep pretending that this doesn't exist. Now, you have a look at what you've seen on Google Earth. You need to also go and start looking more often yourself. Tell me about those things. By the way, we've just had a motorcycle group join us, an off-road motorcycle group. They're let me into their club. I love riding motorcycles, but these guys, these people are going to start taking photos within these places, within the national parks, within the state forests, and start sending them to us. Well, what's wrong with you guys driving the bloody four-wheel drive and you girls driving the four-wheel drives? Why aren't you four-wheel drive clubs posting that stuff onto the group? Lantana Removal Queensland group. Post it there. Come join the group so you get to see how much of this material's out there and how illegal your government and your councils and your federal government operate. Again, until we care enough, nothing's going to change. But I can tell you it will change, because until I'm being paid significant amounts of money to put significant amounts of equipment, I mean serious machinery, into significant places, right, we're never going to swap over to where we're solving this issue. We're going to be consistently for the next, whatever how long it takes, because this is a continuous timeline. Okay, our premiers now, prime ministers, aren't bright enough to understand a continuous timeline means I have them now for 15 months. If it takes 2 years before they suddenly go, holy crap, I understand what a continuous timeline now means. It means every single person in our nation can look up and go, holy hell, these people had this information from this far back, and they did what? While the koalas were being burned alive in the trees in our national parks in Queensland and New South Wales. Now, they've been made aware of this by professionals in lantana and weeds and other issues, fireys, who often are farmers in the Rural Fire Brigade. They've been made aware of this. They've been made aware of how those people's lives are being placed in danger working in environments where the roads don't go anywhere. How the hell is somebody going to know that this road no longer connects down there as an escape route? The fire's just changed direction. Oh, Annastacia Palaszczuk will have a field day with that, going, oh my God, these poor fireys. We lost a whole truckload of fireys and the poor buggers and their families. My condolences go to your family. We're going to be doing this for farmers very soon. And I'm telling you something, if you think my making fun of that is something that's jovial, you know, these premiers need some dealing with, and the Prime Minister needs some dealing with, because we're going to pay with people's lives very soon that one of these fires is going to turn. It's going to turn in there is no prediction. This is the problem. We deal with people who are clueless about environmental issues. They get to decide and say, no, don't cut down a tree. No, a little birdie may live in the lantana. It doesn't live in the bloody lantana. We spent 40 years in there, you fools. Get off your asses and come out to the field like I said to you. I'll drive you out there. I'll show you the lantana. I'll show you why it changed, and I'll show you how it changed. They've never taken up that offer. Never even considered that particular offer. We are going to see fires change direction, and people that live around those national parks are going to die. Whole families are going to die, because half the time it's entire families or the entire male section, or in rural Australia it's the women with the men. We're going to lose an entire section of our community, and those deadbeats will get up there on the graveside and they will pee and moan and carry on and oh my God, I'm so sorry this happened, it's terrible. But see, this is climate change. This is just nature. Winds change. These materials are causing absolutely insane levels of fire risk. Once the fire started, fires within national parks and these types of terrains are completely unpredictable. You can only try and stay out of their way. When they come up a ravine and a gully all of the dynamics change. You got fireys who spent their entire lives fighting fires who are useless when they come out to fight fires on the land. Okay, and they are legends in their job in the city fighting building fires, fighting those types of fires. Fire is not the same animal in different circumstances. You look at fires that happen within vegetation, within these areas, and the fuel load, you can't see what's under the lantana. I've shown you hundreds of times. I've pulled out multiple semi-trailers of lantana, okay, dozens of semi-trailers of lantana, and had six semi-trailer loads of serious timber under there that the lantana had pulled down, consumed, dropped, and was underneath that. That's an enormous fuel load. And people want to tell you, oh, well, lantana's not that big a deal when it burns. It burns hot, burns strong, it burns like this. It burns to the canopy and burns all of the koalas alive in the canopy and everything else that climbed. It burns all those things alive, but that's okay. Annastacia Palaszczuk's government killing koalas is perfectly all right. The dogs killing the koalas in Moreton Bay Regional Council, with their program, and they had 11 koalas killed in one incident, one area, okay? 8 of them were killed by one dog. 3 of them were killed by the other 2 dogs. So there are 3 dogs involved, and I'll bet you lantana was everywhere. Now, the Australia Zoo tell the government this. This isn't a secret. This has been out there forever. But the only bums who kill koalas are farmers. Annastacia Palaszczuk and her government and the New South Wales government have more blood on their hands from animals than any other section of our Australian community by a million times more. And they are completely unrepentant to do anything about it. Now Moreton Bay Regional Council is running this little program to have a day's work here for volunteers, day's work over there for volunteers, and that's supposed to fix something towards this lantana. The lantana that they said for the whole last 15 months was completely off the books. We're not doing anything with lantana. It's not important. This is what we're facing as a nation, trying to get this across. And now we're in a PR campaign where we're going to throw volunteers into a environment that's deadly in nature, absolutely deadly in the critters that are vermin that are hanging out there, the ticks and the rest of the stuff, in diseases that aren't even recognised, with no protective clothing. Like, I mean, this is from an organisation who's supposed to be about workplace health and safety on a huge scale. I'm sick to death of them being able to just operate any way they want in any other environment they want. And yet we have all the knowledge and practical skills in the lantana, and they're still playing games at a nothing level. And this is supposed to be something that they're going to start trying to make mileage off. It's one of the greatest disasters that's happened. But at least something's happening. It means at least they're taking us somewhat serious. But they're never going to stop this until they start putting the money into it. And we're doing the works. We clear all this crap off the sides of the roads. It's got to go. You know, until they're paying for our consultation services for our knowledge, and we are specifically targeting this material in the highest value areas. It isn't where the koalas live. It isn't where there is endangered species. It is where this material has the highest ability to get water and multiply. That's the most important place. So in 98% of the country, we should be fighting this war. Let them continue to do what they do in that other 2%. But the funding has to be put on the table immediately, and Annastacia Palaszczuk, the New South Wales Premier, and the Prime Minister need to get their asses up here and have a look at this material. Because now we have motorcycle groups. We'll have motorcycle groups in New South Wales very shortly coming online, because we have ecotourism destinations and organisations coming online for motorcycle adventure rides. We will be bringing all of this to the people. If they think 2018 was a bad year, 2019 is going to be the year that we rewrite history in our nation, I can tell you now. With what we have in the Lockyer Valley, what we have in every state forestry, in every national park, this will not be going on at the end of this year. I can tell you now, these people are going to be changing some very serious policies very quickly, especially across New South Wales and Queensland, because there is that much pressure here already for them. And we are going to make these changes very quickly. And little piddly bits around the edges of volunteer labour are not going to save you guys. You're actually adding fuel to the fire. Where you do your little works programs and you butcher the whole ecosystem. That's something that we've got to show to people. When the council goes in to do their operations, you need to see what the standard of workmanship is. You need to see what's delivered. If we did that as a contracting business, we'd be in jail, I can tell you now. The EPA, the Environmental Heritage Protection Organisation, would eat our lunch for us. The Department of Natural Resources, Mines and Energies would have our lunch for us. You know, we have people who were handed letters saying that there were complaints made about jobs they did. These are private or contracting businesses in New South Wales. And then it says, well, we found no breach. Okay, it says, we found no breach. But consider this letter an actual warning. Well, hold on a minute. Isn't that government speak to you? Isn't that insanity at its worst? And these people actually get away with this. They wrote to this person saying, this is actually considered an actual warning, but we found no breach. There is no breach. They did 4 of those over a year. They set this process up. And then when they prosecuted that business through court, the council came along and said, you know what? This person is obviously a bad person because they had 4 warnings. But at the top of the page it says, we found no problems. The trouble is, the Australian public is so blind as to how corrupt the government works and how the court system is used in that corruption. I've made complaints to the Queensland Attorney General's office about how these councils are able to break the law in all operational things in releasing lantana into the systems, and then they go forward, hey, and then they go forward and they sorry, I'm losing my train of thought because she's too busy playing, the pup is. So they go and oh damn, completely blank now. So where the Attorney General's office has done nothing about this, they haven't even had the decency to respond. They control the court system. Now you've got biosecurity saying, well, the council obviously has no ability and no knowledge in weeds. That's why you would have to prove that they are aware that what they're doing is incorrect, that it's illegal, that it is doing damage to the environment. But then the biosecurity allows the council to actually write their own weeds programs, write their own weeds plans. There's something considerably wrong with that scenario, and the Attorney General's office just pretends it doesn't exist. There's very serious legal things being done and happening in these circumstances, and people don't bother to look at it and question, how are they getting away with this? So the council goes to court and it prosecutes people. Okay, Moreton Bay Regional Council constantly say, we've never prosecuted somebody. But I'm not so sure about that, because it's pretty hard to get that information, because I've had people come to me in the early days and say, oh yeah, they did this and they did that to us. But I do know an enormous amount of people constantly are harassed by them. Now, quite possibly they're successful in their illegal harassment of those people, and they're making up of these things through their local laws ranges in a what's the name to collect revenue. But have a look at the actual facts. They've allowed this material to grow in all of these environments, and yet biosecurity, the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries, who is biosecurity, actually says that if the material grows in just normal areas, it's 400 plants per plant. If it grows where it has access to 25 millimeters of water, then it will reseed, and it could potentially seed all year round. So I just went with 6 seedings a year. Okay, not with all year round. So 6 seedings, that's 3,600 plants if this material lives on the side of the road. And biosecurity, the head of biosecurity in Queensland, says I'd have to prove that the council aren't aware of this. Didn't the council read the book that the DAF put out on lantana, the best practices? Well, I know Brisbane City Council came here and sat at my table with that book and were quoting from it, but then finished off by saying, but we have no operations in lantana at all. That was at this time last year. We have no operations in lantana at all. We will not be doing any because the state government secretly changed the law to be low risk. Why are people not asking these questions? There's some serious stuff been done to our nation, and we're $20 billion further in the toilet because of our prime ministers and our premiers, and nobody's upset. How many more koalas got burned alive in those trees in northern Queensland? How many of them get burnt at that fire just over Christmas when they couldn't even get permission to go onto that land to fight the fires? They were held up for nearly 2 days trying to get permission to go fight the fires. This is obscene. Fires can't be treated like that. We can't just have a situation that they just left run rampant. So we need to address this volunteer organisation group thing. We need to have proper protective equipment supplied to people before they're ever put in harm's way. And people should never be in there eradicating and removing lantana. They should be always at the back where they're safe. Their lives are too precious. It should be machinery in those areas. We shouldn't be poisoning those areas because it destroys the subsoil life and the amount of weeds that come back because you destroyed the subsoil life is why we had all those problems where the council says to you, if we kill this weed, worse weeds show up. It's because they don't know what they're doing. It's because the poisoning program they're using is destroying the subsoil life. Go and have a chat to Soils for Life on Facebook and ask them the questions. You destroy the subsoil life, you pay a huge price. The costs of fighting lantana go through the roof. The initial cost that they say, oh, well, you know, it costs them $2,000 an acre. You know, so, you know, they don't tell you about the other $2,000 an acre it costs for the rehabilitation costs because they left it growing there for 10 years. Or the fact that they destroyed all the subsoil life. Or the fact that we are going to see fires happen in this material from where they poisoned it and they left it there. So they're counting that whole process as being an active process that works because they say, well, we poisoned it and it's dead, but the material's still sitting there. It's an enormous fire hazard, and you're going to end up in a situation where somebody is going to light this crap up and more animals are going to die. You know, in Australia, we cannot afford for uncontrolled fires. We can't afford that. And these poisoning projects are exactly that. These people don't have the skill to operate machinery in these environments. That's what we do. We operate machinery in 30-degree slopes and leave the leaf litter and the leaf litter and the grasses still sitting there, still in place. And all we took was the lantana from those areas. And these people treat us with utter contempt because I'm doing these videos, because I'm raising the awareness. We need you to stand up and tell these people they need to put us in the front line. They need to fund us. They need to pull the pin and set us loose. And we will take care of this business. It isn't that hard to do, but they've got to get committed to do it. And they will have to. My making this noise, making these videos, until they swap around to being positive videos that This is the amount of land we cleared. This is how we do it. Let's get us into your community and help us to set you guys up and get you guys actively doing this. Creating jobs in local communities. You know, this could be the greatest thing in Australian history, and I said this to all of these politicians, to the Prime Ministers and the Premiers. This is going to be the worst thing in Australian history and political history, or it's going to be the greatest time in our... So lantana is either going to be the worst thing in our national history with politics, or it's going to be the greatest uniting factor within our entire communities and draw all of our politics together when it stops being a dirty little secret under the carpet, pushed to the side, and we deal with it as a nation. This is a capital works program. The government has caused millions of hectares of this material to grow and infest everybody else. We are never going to deal with it while we continue to pretend that the government can keep sweeping it under the carpet. The government will turn 180 degrees on this subject, regardless of me, regardless of anything else, because this material is coming out of those areas so fast and so hard that eventually it's not going to be something they can hide from, which is what's happening with Google Earth. There is nowhere for them to pretend this doesn't exist. Their backsides are grass and we are the lawnmower. You want this to change over to happy times? Then put the bloody money on the table and let's get out in those fields and let's teach all Australians how deadly and how bad this material is and how to get rid of it. And once we have that community pride going and those jobs are being made and put into local communities, everything will change. This garbage of government's telling you there's no money, it's too expensive. They don't pay for this crap. Get serious about this. They actually pay for the setup costs of this to start going, and then they're picking up taxes off people working. They're picking up fuel being used. They're picking up machinery being bought. They're picking up people going out there and making a difference, and land's becoming economical. When we look at how much land has been lost to this material in production, just the reinvigoration of that land to be productive again would pay for these costs. Our nation would be growing so much more food, so much better environments, stronger, healthier. Lantana does not do well in that. When the vigor of the rest of the environment is growing so strong and so well, lantana doesn't get the leg in that it gets. Lantana's greatest claim to fame is where it can get into lands where they're not used. All of these parklands, all of these waterways where people are being excluded from, all of these national parks where they're being excluded from, lantana thrives there. By the time it's pouring out of those places, as it is today, that's the greatest catastrophe in Australian history. And our government is doing that to us. We shouldn't feel sorry for them. They're only putting money on a table for immediate job creation and an immediate national capital works program, which means the problems get addressed. If we keep playing around with this at a local level where we say, oh, no, it's too big, then it will never be addressed. Okay, this is why it's always a capital works, national capital works program. It's an Australian problem. For God's sake, government, wake up to yourself. Stop putting it under the carpet because it's the people's problem. We need to be told about it. We need to have the education and the money there and go educate people, and then we'll smash this stuff into smithereens. It will have nowhere to hide. Because people with so much pride in our country will be after this place. There's nowhere for these materials to hide. But it was not okay for you to turn around and rob them of that decision to fight. For them to go out there and take this stuff down. If they were told how bad this was, these materials would have never got to 14 million hectares. 20 million hectares next year. $120-odd billion problem. It's not low risk. Okay, let's not persecute you by the low risk tag. Let's not play any more games on that. Put the bloody money on the table, pull the pin on us and let us loose on this material. Today, tomorrow, let's go. Because your volunteer program is going to reap you nothing but sadness and tragedy. It is going to cause you so much grief, the same way that this risk assessment weeds-based program is the worst thing you could ever come up with from your end of it. It's the best thing you could have done for me. Because the public has 100% in front of them, $120 billion by year's end, and 20 million hectares, and growing at the rate of Tasmania. We're going to have a bigger state soon. I'm going to have to look at the map and work out which is bigger than Tasmania, because that's what we need next year. It might be New South Wales. It might be the size of New South Wales is the area covered in that one weed. We've got 32 of them, and they're doing equally as good a job on every single one of those weeds. Now, until we put the public into the picture and we release them on these materials, we are never seriously going to do the damage we need to do. But just because you can't imagine a program so well run, so well organised, and with so much knowledge of the materials, doesn't mean it can't exist. But we got to get the money on the table and get after this stuff and stop playing games with sideline little tiny things. Volunteer organisations, single people doing work on the ground by hand is just an absolute disaster. The resources that it ties up in trying to keep those things going is just absolutely nonsensical. It is absolutely ridiculous. It's a huge, it's a huge drain on our resources. We need mechanical applications in there on a large scale. With the knowledge I have in developing better mechanisms, okay, we will hybridize equipment to even higher production rates than currently I'm capable of, because of my knowledge to be able to design better tools to go onto that machinery. Better machinery in the field in all different applications to cause less disturbance, less damage. This is where councils and governments have not a clue. We need to be doing less damage while we're doing this. That's where they've always been wrong. Anyway, look, thank you for taking the time to watch all this stuff. I hope you really enjoy the videos. I know some of them are intense, but this subject is so bad, and the changes that they're making with this volunteer rubbish, and you bring your own clothes, you bring your own things, shows you, it's proof positive of exactly how little these people know about the enemy. How deadly the things are that are inside of these materials. The exact reason why these materials should never have been allowed to get to this stage. And now at least they're saying, well, yeah, Gary was right, so now we're suddenly making all these little programs on the side because he was right. The levels of these infestations have to end now. We have to be going after this material with an absolute vengeance. It's not going to be easy to hit 4 million hectares, I can tell you now. People in the farming know what it would take to scale up to do 4 million hectares. 6 million hectares in open country, open terrain. That's a specialist. That's not people from council, I can tell you now. They couldn't tie their own shoes. They're not the people that you put in this battle. They can go along and mop up after us and replant after us. That's the job that the council can do. That's something they could handle. But the costs are high, but, you know, at least it keeps them out of the main battlefront. But until they actually fund this, put money into it, support us, sitting down, talking to us, so how do we go about this? We know they're not serious about any real changes. We know that because they're not talking. We know the government's not talking. We know they haven't changed their ecological policies until they sit down, until they're ringing us up and saying, listen, how about we sit down and have a meeting here? Send us an email. Talk to us. Get onto our Facebook. Join our Facebook. Anyway, I'm Gary, Lantana Removal Queensland. Join our group, Lantana Removal Queensland. Our motorcycle groups that are joining us, thank you to everyone who's coming on board. Thank you to the four-wheel drive clubs that have been posting and sending us information about the amazing work that they've done on Fraser Island. Let's all go after this material in a serious way and make 2019 the year that we changed our history and our nation. I'll catch you on the next video, guys. Thank you for popping in. Bye-bye.